Welcome to Storyteller's Hearth, Fireside Tales 5-episode series on Empress Matilda, England's forgotten queen. Lords, ladies, and lovers of legend, gather close. For 19 winters, England endured a crippling civil war, its crown being contested by two cousins. One stood defiant, Matilda, daughter of an English king and only legitimate heir to his throne, mother of the Plantagenet dynasty of English kings, a woman who dared to claim her birthright and nearly shattered history's glass ceiling. Yet her name has virtually been erased, warranting only a brief footnote in high school history books as a pretender. Until now. Why watch? Get the unfiltered historical legends. No Hollywood gloss, just the stories as handed down by the early chroniclers, with all the grit of real medieval politics. These are the same tales they told around castle hearths for the past 900 years. Matilda Unchained, the first woman to fight for England's throne, not as a queen consort, but as its sovereign. It is a saga of a woman who made her own destiny in a world not ready to accept women monarchs. We are there with her when she was only days from being crowned queen. Everything had been arranged, the cathedral booked, and then she angered the people with her entitled arrogance, necessitating her last-minute flight for her life. It is a story of a woman who lost the crown when it was within her grasp, yet lived to see her son become one of England's most successful kings. Fireside atmosphere. Grab a mead or a wine, lean in, and let the crackling hearth carry you to the 12th century. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to join us as we resurrect the past. One tale at a time. History remembers kings, but tonight we remember the Empress. The rider came at dusk, his cloak heavy with rain, his horse lathered from the hard ride. He bore a message sealed with the royal arms of England, a summons from the English king to his daughter in Germany. Empress Matilda, widow of Henry V, Holy Roman Emperor, stood motionless as the parchment was placed in her hands. The wax cracked like the fragile peace of Europe. "You are to return to Normandy," the letter commanded, "not as my daughter, but as my heir apparent." Her fingers tightened. Heir, a word that carried the weight of a crown and the edge of a knife. To understand this, we need to look back 5 years to Normandy on that cold November night in 1120, when the White Ship sank. For further information on this horrific disaster, don't forget to watch our 2-part series entitled The Blanche Nef. On that fateful night, Prince William Adelin, the uncontested golden-haired heir of the English crown, had laughed as he boarded La Blanche Nef, the finest ship in his father's fleet. The nobles drank, the sailors sang, and the prince dared them to race the royal vessel back to shore. On board were the heirs to over 150 of the leading English families, together with their servants, the ship's crew, and an unwilling debt collector. The ship struck a rock, the freezing waters of the channel swallowing them whole. Prince William and his companions represented England's future. One by one, the cream of English nobility died as they slipped below the waves as the cold overcame them. By dawn, only one man, a butcher named Berold from Rouen, who had reportedly come aboard last moment to collect debts owed by some of the nobles before they left for England, when the ship set out with him still on board. It was he alone who clung to life by morning, his body lashed to the mast like a grim omen. Ordinary folk perceived this to be divine justice for a nobody to be saved while England's elite drowned, and the more pious of medieval chroniclers pronounced it to have been God's judgment on the arrogant nobility, perhaps because They had refused to allow a couple of monks bless the voyage before sailing. When King Henry heard the news in Portsmouth, he fell to his knees, devastated. They said his heart turned to stone that dreadful night in 1120, and was never seen to smile again. Now, 6 years later, the barons stood in the king's great hall, their faces stiff with resentment. One by one, they knelt before Matilda, swearing fealty to the woman many eventually would betray. "I pledge my loyalty to you as Henry's rightful heir," murmured Matilda's cousin, Stephen of Blois, his lips brushing her ring. His eyes, though sharp as a dagger's point, held a different promise. Matilda knew these oaths were parchment thin, but her father's willpower was of iron. Henry's next shocking surprise for Matilda came the following year. "I have arranged for you to marry young Geoffrey of Anjou," he declared. "He is handsome, and I hear he'll make a good warrior." Matilda's blood drained from her face. Geoffrey was just a boy of 15 and merely a count. It would be an enormous step down for someone like her, who had been crowned Queen of the Romans in Mainz Cathedral and Holy Roman Empress by the papal envoy in the Vatican. She, who had even ruled Italy in her husband's absence, was now bound to a red-haired, freckle-faced child with a youthful warrior's swagger and a grin that mocked her pride. "This is so humiliating," she hissed at her father. Yet Henry's gaze was unyielding. "This is important to me, to us. The French and Flemish are seeking an opportunity to attack Normandy as soon as my back is turned with affairs in England, and you, with the help of Anjou, could guard my flank. You and Geoffrey will be able to protect my borders from those greedy marauders. In return, I will give you some of my Norman lands and castles." The marriage was volatile at the beginning, but after a couple of years, they appeared to have resolved their differences. In any event, by 1134, the two were openly working together against her father, whom they believed was too slow in fulfilling his promises of lands and castles. When asked when, his answer was always later. They asserted Henry's promises were just ink on parchment, and like petulant children began pillaging Normandy in revenge. Geoffrey was, by then, no longer a boy groom, but a seasoned warrior of 22. The two juvenile delinquents ruthlessly burned castles that were loyal to Henry. Fields were salted and wells poisoned. The message was clear: defy us, and you'll pay. On one castle, Geoffrey's men dug trenches below their fortifications, collapsing the walls. When the garrison surrendered, Matilda let them live, but held their lord's son for ransom. This did little to endear the pair to the Anglo-Norman nobility in England, who for the most part also had estates in Normandy. When Henry died on December 1st, 1135, the realm held its breath. Matilda and Geoffrey were in Anjou, dealing with the aftermath of their rebellion against Henry, and were busy consolidating their power in Normandy. Across the Channel, the barons murmured. The oath had been forced, and now the Angevins had clearly become their enemies. Besides, no woman had ever ruled England. Stephen, ever the opportunist, moved like lightning. He rode to London, spinning hearsay tales of Henry's deathbed, change of heart, and let the people's cheers drown out the truth. He had bribed the citizens of London by offering them tax cuts and new rights and privileges in return for their support. With the help of his brother, Henry the Bishop of Winchester, he quickly won the favor of the church too. By the time the bishops had placed the crown on Stephen's head, it seemed too late for Matilda. The message was clear. England would eagerly bow to a usurper before it bowed to a dislikable tyrant queen. Geoffrey's sword carved a path through Normandy, his vengeance as brutal as it was brilliant. Castles fell, towns burned. The Norman barons, already wary of Matilda, now hated her Angevin husband. But Matilda cared little for their scorn. She had a crown to reclaim. The first invasion came at dusk. Matilda's ships cut through the fog like ghosts, her army a shadow at England's throat. Civil war erupted. It was not with a single battle, but 100 betrayals. Barons switched sides mid-fight several times on a whim. Villages vanished in smoke. Old grievances were revenged, and lawlessness reigned. The chroniclers would name this time the Anarchy, when Christ and his saints slept. And at its heart was a woman scorned, a throne refused, and a reckoning written in fire. Thank you for joining us for Episode 1, Maud the Lioness, the first episode in our 5-part saga of Empress Maud's remarkable life. Her story is only beginning. Next time, witness the cunning and courage of Episode 2, A Queen's Ploy, where ambition and betrayal collide. This has been a Storyteller's Hearth Fireside Tales production. If you enjoyed this journey into history, be sure to subscribe, like, and share so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may the fires of legend keep burning.